All right, Bang Bang. Today is Tuesday. It's February 16th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief, of course. Chief, how we doing today? Besides getting absolutely pummeled with snow and below freezing temps.
The weather's tough. And they always say, like, hey, if it wasn't for Chicago winter, Chicago would have 30 million people living here. So it's days like today where you got to be tough and just hunker down. Don't go outside unless you have to, and get ready to hopefully have a good summer, like where people are allowed to enjoy Chicago. This year stings a little bit extra because we didn't get the benefit of a 2020 summer to like kind of push off some of those like negative thoughts about how fucking terrible it is out there right now. Like your face hurts. You walk outside, you're in pain automatically. So hopefully things get better here.
Yeah, it's tough too because I know the initial snow like 2 weeks ago, I was kind of like seeing a lot of people complain, and I was wondering, what do people expect? Like, this is what, like, we got to be a little tougher. But then now it's like to the point where it's very much okay to complain.
I was in the same boat. Like, what do you got? Like, it had been very mild, like from December up until that first big snow from a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, hey, like this is part of what we signed up for. Now it just feels like this is like God punishing us for something. Like we did something terrible and he's just going to make us bitter and cold. Like I'm glad I have a dog, but every time I take him out, I'm like, you have about 5 minutes to pee. Otherwise we're both going inside.
Yeah. Restaurants, you're back open, but good luck getting people there because they're not fucking getting in there.
Nope.
Too fucking.
I will be at Declan's this coming weekend though. God is my witness. Hell or high water.
There you go. You got that going for you at least.
Yep.
So today's Tinfoil Tuesday. Should be no surprise to anybody, but we are going to talk about the Cecil Hotel and the death and I guess you could say the early disappearance of Elisa Lam.
Well, I mean, she's dead.
Well, yeah. But I know she's dead, but my point was disappearance.
Yeah.
It's not disappearance anymore if she's found dead.
They recovered a body. Yeah.
A one-time disappearance is what I mean.
Yes.
So taking over Netflix, obviously. I think it was the number one trending show of the weekend. Could have done
still trending number one as of 3:12 Central Time on Monday.
There you go. So yeah, I debated doing it for Friday, but there's a lot of wrinkles in the case. There's a lot of wrinkles in the doc. So I was like, hey, let's just do it for Tuesday.
It's got some tinfoil for sure.
Definitely. But before we really kick off here, Chief, I do want to talk about Roman. Because obviously most guys have tried different ways to last longer in bed, but thinking about baseball, thinking about what's going to be the next true crime doc, thinking about how to solve things, thinking about the online sleuths doesn't always work. And that's why the folks at Roman, an online mental health company, changing the game with the Roman Swipes. Roman Swipes are clinically proven as a way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and they're fast acting, but they don't require a prescription. Roman can ship swipes to you in discreet, unmarked packaging, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it on, let it dry, and you're good to go. That's it. Chief, these are big time. You love the swipes. You had a nice Valentine's Day with Roman, right?
Yeah, of course. And that's one of the beauties of this winter and this weather. You got to hunker down, hold your girl tight. Like you're going to be inside, you're going to be with each other. That's how you have these like, what was the thing the last time they had the polar vortex babies? Like that's what we're going through right now. So you swipe that thing on, you're going for multiple hours killing time if that's your thing. But yeah, you swipe them on, nobody knows anything. You swipe them on and you're good to go.
Yep. All you got to do is go to GetRoman.com/walk. You can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when they choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/walk. Go get your hands on some Roman. Enhance your sex game. All right. Elisa Lam, the Cecil Hotel. Where do you want to start here, Chief?
Well, did you know about this place beforehand, before this case?
The hotel, I did not know about the history of it per se. I did know about the case of Elisa Lam. I have seen the elevator video. I was very interested in it. And I never did a complete deep dive. I knew what happened. I had known the story of where they found her and all that, but I didn't know about the low-income housing and all of that.
Yeah, so I went in completely blind. And, they're talking about, like, I've heard the term Skid Row before, and I never knew that it was about, like, specific places. And this place where the Cecil Hotel was in LA was certainly one of those places. And I had no idea because it's just like, I'm not the big murder mystery guy, but finding out that, there's probably 10,000 people who had lived in this LA's version of Skid Row, or in and around the Cecil Hotel, and that they had long-term residents there. I didn't know that either. So you have these people who are, they had one guy in the documentary be like, yeah, like I was from New York and, I was homeless. I was like, I just got to make my way to LA. And he basically just like walked and hitchhiked and like found his way. And he ended up in this one part of Los Angeles, Skid Row, where the Cecil Hotel was. And you could stay there because at one time it was like considered, in the early 20th century, it was like a nice place. And then over time, like by the time the 60s and 70s rolled around, it was in that bad part of town where you just had a bunch of like a high homeless population. You had a lot of drug dealers and drug users in that area. And people who were needed a cheap place to stay for an extended time would stay at the Cecil Hotel, and they would almost treat it kind of like a hostel, where they'd have multiple people stay into a room, which is what Elisa was doing there to begin with. But it looked like, when you talk about, people always say like there's an expression like, if you have never met anybody in hell, then you haven't met enough people. Like hell's a real place. And like, if you look at like what goes on in Liberia, it's a real place. If you look at what goes on in like Skid Row, that tells you like hell's a real place. And that's kind of what this represented, like all like the worst parts of the underbelly of society. And those people would find a place to live for $400 a month or $3 a night, stuff like that, at the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah, and it was part of programs as well, because obviously people are constantly trying to help these people out who are going through tough times and might be addicted to drugs and are just in a bad way. And people will kind of sponsor these people to stay at the hotels. And Cecil is the common one because it's very cheap, like you said. So that's kind of how the doc goes. It lays out what Cecil Hotel is. And the downtown of LA, which is so interesting to me, because you hear downtown, you always think like, oh, that's where it is. That's where all the action happens. And so it hadn't even occurred to me that downtown LA is not considered a good place to be if you're a tourist, I should say, or really anyone.
Yeah, and I guess it's always been that way too, with LA specifically. So, and it's LA is always a town like, oh, you go out to LA, you go to West Hollywood. Oh, you go out, you're in LA, you're really in Santa Monica. Like no one really goes to downtown LA unless there's a reason to, or you're looking for places like this to stay.
Had you known about Skid Row before this, obviously?
I had heard of it as like an expression, like, oh, like they're on Skid Row, like they're going to Skid Row, like, but it's, I use it as like a euphemism for like just a bad place, which is what it is. But I guess like I did a Wikipedia search of it, and like every major city kind of has a Skid Row. And it was that term dates back to like the Pacific Coast. And it really, the term, it was like they had these like wooden roads and a skid. A skid is like another name for a pallet. So like a wooden pallet. So they would have these roads just kind of made out of logs, because it was so wet there all the time that the only way to like not have mud, and they didn't have like a real road system, that they would have like these just wooden pallets and wooden logs kind of laid down, in these newer areas. And that's where that term eventually came from, is from Seattle and Vancouver, these wet areas were these new cities, but they would have like these like basically camps on these skid roads where people, immigrants, workers, whatever, people looking for opportunity would go out there to these cities as they were starting up. And that was like a poor place to, you didn't need a lot of money to stay there. So it just became like a euphemism for that type of area all over the place. But like Houston has one, they said Chicago has a Skid Row, LA, New York, like they just kind of use that term for all different places all across the country.
Yeah, obviously Donnie had a really popular video that I'm sure most people watched, where him and Vibs went down and saw the mole people below Las Vegas. So You're right. There is a variation of some kind of Skid Row in every city. I do believe that the one in LA is like the largest, and it's actually because and they say it in the doc how it's modeled to, condense it to that part of the city so it doesn't kind of bleed out. And
well, that was news to me too.
Was it?
Yeah, where they forcibly like keep people in there. Yeah, like that seems kind of fucked up to me too. Like, hey, like if you're this type of particular person, you can get into Skid Row, but you can't necessarily get out like that. So it's like, I don't know, like that was like we're doing that here in America. But have you ever been to the West Coast? Have you spent any time out there?
I've been to LA. I've never been
Okay.
to obviously Skid Row per se, but and I also know it's a big topic of conversation. I think Rogan talks about it quite a bit too. I've heard him have discussions about it.
I mean, like I went to San Diego. I guess it was probably Memorial Day, like 2017. It was horrifying how many homeless people were living. Like every bridge, every underpass, everything had, it was just like tent city. So you had all these like communities, these like, people living in tents and shanties, and even just like you would see like metal poles and like bungee cords. If you couldn't afford a tent, like people are doing like makeshift tents out of tarps and stuff and blankets and things like that. And it's like, I guess like at least the weather is warm. If you're, it's better to be homeless in San Diego than in Chicago, I would assume, especially on a day like today where it's, -3 degrees. But it is like an overwhelming amount of people. And I think that was definitely the case in the 70s, where you had, and I think you kind of see this in Portland and Seattle today too, where you just have these kind of like vagrant people where they just leave wherever they're from and make their way west. And they ended up in these communities, and Skid Row in LA, they said at its peak had anywhere from 8 to 10,000 people living in it. So it's really quite shocking. Like, that's a lot of people to be living in a condensed area that are all homeless people. So, but it's bad.
Yeah, so that kind of paints the picture of where the surrounding area is.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Cecil Hotel is right there. And like we said, a lot, there's a handful of people that stay there, but it also is cheap. So tourists, if you're looking for a spot and it's like, hey, I'm just crashing for a night, I just want to throw my shit down, then I'm going to go explore the Hollywood sign or whatever. A lot of people would stay at the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah. And I think you saw that with the girl, Elisa Lam. Like, she was from Vancouver. She's 21 years old. She's going to do like a West Coast trip, by her traveling alone. And this would be the type of place, like if you or I, or, young people from Chicago were going to go to Europe, like this Cecil Hotel has a hostel vibe. So if you're not like, hey, like, I don't really know what's going on in LA, like Airbnb this was 2013. So I think Airbnb wasn't really a thing. Maybe the company had started, but it wasn't like, oh, like I'm just going to find a cheap room on Airbnb. Like, no, like you would seek out a place like the Cecil Hotel that operates basically as a hostel, just because it's in a city that you want to see. So like her logic there for staying is something probably millions of people her age have done the last 20, 30 years while traveling. You got a limited budget. You're essentially backpacking up and down the coast. That's the type of crash place that like I know in my head, if I were doing that trip at 21, that's the type of place I would have stayed.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. She's from Vancouver, so like we were saying, she's 21. We'll lay out the format of the whole everything that went down, and then we'll get into kind of what we think and all the weirdness of it after. But yeah, so she's 21. She's from Vancouver. She's going from San Diego to LA to Santa Cruz to San Francisco. Her second stop, LA. She stays at the Cecil because, probably trying to save a couple bucks. She's only 21.
Right.
And she goes missing, I believe it was on February 1st of 2013.
Right. So she's been gone just about exactly 8 years, 8 years and 2 weeks. And yeah, so like, I guess, why don't we talk about that? What did you think about the formatting of the documentary?
So I saw a lot of people say that. I saw mixed reviews. I'll put it that way. When it first came out, when it first hit the surface, there was a lot of people on Friday being like, oh, you got to check this out. This is great. This is great. And then I don't know if it tailed off and people were more disappointed as it went on, because then I heard a lot of opposite reviews where it's like, oh, 4 episodes could have been condensed into 2, could have been condensed into 3, could have just been one long doc that didn't have 4 different episodes. I enjoyed it, but I don't know if that's because I was so intrigued by the case, because like I said, the video, the elevator video is when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's one of the craziest videos you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And I've always been intrigued by that. So I was locked in on that. Of course, they like kind of sprinkle different bits of information and then they'd
Right.
like come back to it in the next episode. Like they never did anything like in a row, which was weird.
Yeah. So did you ever watch the documentary? I think it came out last year, or the year before. Don't Fuck with Cats.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're trying to do it like that, where it's like you're almost like you're going through the investigation in real time, even though it happened 8 years ago or in the past. So I thought it worked for Don't Fuck with Cats, and it worked less so with this. But the other thing that they both those documentaries did is that they interviewed these people who were just regular internet people. Like they, once the police and some of they released evidence to the public, like that elevator video, then that just turns the internet on and turns them loose. And so we got to see, like, you had like the manager, owner, I don't know if she owned the hotel, that woman who changed the name from the Cecil Hotel to Stay on Main, the blonde woman, to the detectives. But then you just had a lot of like random, like, we'll call them internet sleuths who just like kind of like get off on solving these crimes or being involved. And I don't know, I feel like I would have preferred to maybe limit the amount of people who were speaking and just do like a deeper dive and maybe condense it that way. But yeah, I thought overall, maybe I thought it was like a 2-part or 3-parter was definitely necessary. 4th, maybe not, but it was that it is that style where it's like you're going through the investigation with them. I just don't think that they laid it out as well as other documentaries have.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, they definitely probably had one too many sleuths, I'd say.
Yeah.
Which was, I know some people didn't like about it in general,
Mm-hmm.
but hey, these people exist and
Right.
they're a big part of the story just because you have people like that guy Morbid
Yep.
at the end where, I mean, we could just completely get into it. Cause at this
Mhm.
point, if you're still listening, I assume you've seen it. The real Marilyn Manson looking fucking dude who had a bunch of, but they went after him and they thought he did it. So
Yep.
that's where like the internet mob and like everything like that kind of comes into play,
Yeah, you got to be careful. Like there's a reason why people do this professionally and like why things don't get released to the public all at once. And it's because if you're going to be involved in this, if you're going to like involve yourself, rather, you should probably try to hold yourself to the same standard that the police do. And I think we saw that like in that Don't Fuck with Cats, where you had the woman who was named Body Movin', like that was her screen name if you remember her. But
Yeah.
she was like, I don't know what she does for her real job anymore. I can't remember, but she should just be an investigator like that. Like she should work for a police force because she was just on it, like looking up. So like I understand like using like the police are like, hey, like we're out, like we should crowdsource this investigation. And it really can help. And that definitely helped with Don't Fuck with Cats. With this one, it seemed like maybe it did more harm than good.
Completely different type of sleuths as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, because you knew there was someone actively doing something wrong.
Right.
Like there was someone out there who was killing these cats and,
Right.
know,
Oh, it was on video. Yeah.
Yes. You knew they had something to hunt. They had
Mhm.
a room. They had a light switch. They had all that stuff. This was like, oh, this is weird. There must be something going
They had
on.
an unsolved murder.
Yes. There
Which I
must
guess
be
you could say
something.
that you want to talk about the case of this because to me I don't know if this was a murder or not. Like that's the thing that like they had a guy in that other documentary. They had a guy like they knew this guy committed a murder. There's no video of the murder happening with this Elisa Lam case.
Well, I swear. And that's another thing about the doc, and they intentionally did this. But as it was going on, and I could see this making people mad because at the time I was writing shit down to do this podcast, and I was like, oh, what about that? They never talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then within the last 20 minutes, they tied up a million loose ends.
Yeah.
So they knew what they were doing in making it, entertainment in quotes,
Right.
because right when they said they just glossed over in the first episode, oh, she was also in a room with 2 other girls, but she was being like a nuisance or a disturbance. So they removed her and gave her own room. And I instantly wrote that down. I was like, well, what the fuck was she doing?
Right.
And they don't say it until the last 20 minutes. Well, she was leaving them weird post-its saying, get out, leave.
She's being a crazy person.
Yes. Get away. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Like that part where it's like they, but I don't know how you tell that. Like I don't know. Like I don't know how I would have done it differently, I guess is my point. But they do say like, yeah, they asked her to leave, and they didn't really say why. They probably should have said that this girl was leaving like notes, and maybe that's where you get into the thing where it could have been one episode, because you could have been like, hey, like this girl was being diagnosed for bipolar. And the other thing that was, but like, do you want to get into the details of this case? I guess like, you know, where she stopped taking her medication, and then they found her bottles, and they had actually more pills in the bottle than had been prescribed. Like that was weird. So like they, you know, they originally set it up as like, she's just this happy-go-lucky girl coming of age story on this Western, you know, California journey. And then it's like, well, there's more to it than that. And maybe if they had teed it up that way to begin with, it would have been better off.
So yeah, like you said, everyone has, you know, or a lot of people have done something like this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, of course, there's always more to the story. And I guess one criticism is they took so much stock into the Tumblr, which I don't, that? I not really, to be honest with you. Did you?
Okay. Well, I like the idea of using the person's own words like that. And maybe that should have been the whole first episode, where you kind of set up like what Cecil Hotel is, but you also set up what she is. And she's a girl who's putting herself out there. She's got some kind of, you know, I feel like it's become cliche, but she's an introvert who becomes like an extrovert on the internet. And she has no problem like talking about, you know, her medications and some of her challenges and things like that. Like she doesn't like the fact that she has to take these medications to regulate her, we'll call it brain chemistry. So the fact that she was traveling alone and left to her own devices, and I guess maybe it's hard to say, but maybe she, under her own free will, decided to stop taking her medication. And that was the first step down this path that made her either a victim of somebody else because she was, you know, easy prey, or something that she did to herself.
I guess maybe I shouldn't say I don't like it. I should say I don't like it from the aspect of there was nobody from her family or nobody that knew her throughout all 4 episodes. So when you just take those words and then you have random sleuths who I thought the one guy was fucking weird. Yeah. Like really weird, who like had someone watch someone go to her gravesite and like, remember that, you know what I'm talking about? That one guy, he's like kind of baldish guy.
Yep.
And I have those people saying like what she would have wanted and stuff. I'm like, that's a lot for me.
Right. How could you do that? Like you know, you could take those certain things out of context. Like I like being able to like paint like a picture of who somebody is, but I would never be able to be like, well, she would definitely do this because on January, whatever, 2010, she wrote this.
Yeah.
And like that to me was weird. But should we talk about like the case itself? Like, so kind of tee that up. So,
but before we get into it, Chief, we got to talk about our friends at Roman. You know the drill.
I know the drill. I know the drill.
Tell us about the drill. Give us the drill.
Well, the drill involves some drilling. And if you want to drill for an extended period of time, what you're going to want to do is take one of those swipe packets, fits easily into your wallet, discreet packaging, swipe it on, let it dry, and go to town. And you're in for a night. Everybody involved is in for a night because, you know, thinking about your fucking murder docs doesn't get most people off. Thinking about baseball doesn't, you know, help people put off what the ending here. So if you want to put off an early end to your night, you want to have those Roman swipes, swipe them on, doesn't transfer your partner. It's a great, great product.
Yeah, stop with your old methods. They're just luck. If they, you know, this is clinically proven. Stop with the thinking about the notes of the trombone, or you know what I mean. Stop with any of that. I don't even know if that.
Who wants to be thinking about other stuff when you're in the be in the moment? Roman allows you to be in the moment. That's where you want to be mentally, physically. It is clinically proven to let you stay in the moment longer.
There you go. Go to GetRoma.com/walk. You can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoma.com/walk. Go get your swipes, everybody. We're telling you to do so please do it. All right, let's hop into part 2 right here about the Cecil Hotel and Elisa Lam.
I mean, the floor is yours. You're the murder guy.
Okay, so the case itself. So it sounds like it begins with them having the footage of her being in the hotel.
Yep.
So they know she's there. Then they don't really show anything on that. They just show the elevator video. So she's on the elevator. She darts her head out. She looks both ways. She goes back. She goes in the back. She goes in the back corner. Then she slides, goes to like the front of the elevator. Before that, so I don't know the exact sequence of the videos. Before that, I think she does press like every button in the middle. But you know what I'm talking about if you've seen it and you've seen it, so you know what I'm describing.
Yeah, the elevator video, and it's just like a security camera that would be in basically any elevator in the whole country. And the thing that was most disturbing about that was you normally have like that little time ticker, and that is distorted. Like you can't really read it. And so it's like how much time has elapsed. The total video is like 4 minutes and change. And then they do through this investigation through these internet sleuths, and this is something that the police released to the public, was that it's on YouTube, that internet video. And you're right, like she gets in the elevator almost as if it's normal, and then it's like, why would she press every button? And she darts her head out. She's just kind of standing in the back corner, and then she darts her head out to see if anybody's coming, and she doesn't act as if she sees anybody. Darts in and out, then back in, presses more buttons, in, out, back in, whatever. Then it's like she's clearly hiding, like she's pressing herself up against one corner so nobody can see her. Same thing. She steps out. The elevator is not operating. So it's like, what is going on? Like the elevator doesn't move. And then they release the fact that they believe that the elevator video has been doctored. And there's evidence from that distorted time ticker that maybe there's as much as 53 seconds removed. And then there's one frame that they highlight on that appears to be maybe the front of somebody's shoe that got captured on camera. So then it's like, well, why are they doctoring? Like, who's doctoring the video? What's the motivation for doctoring it? Who had access to doctor it? Who ordered it doctored? And no one was ever really able to give an answer for that. So that just gives more fuel to the fire, gasoline on the fire, whatever you want to call it, of like, oh, like this is a major conspiracy. Who's involved? The hotel manager, the murderer, her friends, the LAPD, like who has to like gain or hide something that, from like what would be the motivation to remove that 53 seconds, if not to conceal the identity of the person who is there outside the elevator? Because they're instantly suspect number one if you're the last person to see her alive. And then it's like, as soon as she steps out of the elevator and then the door closes behind her, she's not in it anymore. And then the elevator works normally. So she's in there for a long time pressing buttons. Like anybody who's been in an elevator, it's like 10 seconds in an elevator for the doors not to close feels like an eternity, because you're like, man, I hope nobody else comes. And then, so for her to just be mashing all the buttons and the elevator doesn't move, then she steps out of the elevator and it moves, makes you think that somebody else was holding the button from the outside, being like, you're not going anywhere. That's what it would seem to me. Like otherwise the elevator would just start.
Yeah. But first off, I never saw a shoe. Did you see a shoe?
I saw something that looked like it could have been a shoe. You didn't see that one frame where it looked like,
to me, that was like the back of her shoe. I don't know, like maybe she took a weird step, a turn. I could be
that too, but it was definitely, it was something, so I'm not saying it was a shoe of a murderer, but it was definitely a shoe.
Yeah. No doubt about it, but I never seen it as someone else is out there,
Yeah. And she also appeared like later. So like at first she seems normal. Then when she's like maybe 2 minutes into that video, she's moving in her hands in like a weird way, like almost kind of waving or grasping at like thin air. So it's like, is she having some sort of episode, like she hallucinating, like what's going on? But then there's speculation that the video was slowed down. So like these weird hand movements that she was making, maybe they wouldn't look so weird if they were in real time. Like then it's just like you're talking with your hands like everybody else does all the time. So she might have been like pleading with somebody, but they slow the video down in that section. And again, the time clock was distorted. So it looks like she's going insane or having some sort of episode. But that, again, that hasn't really been explained either.
Yeah, but like I said too, they had a good explanation for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it sitting there? Someone was out there holding the elevator, making sure it didn't move. She was pressing the hold elevator button that stood for 2 minutes. That's why it wasn't moving. So
That too. I mean, like that's. But then I don't know. But she also pressed the other one. That holds it for 2 minutes. Like that seems like a long time.
well, I mean, that's what it said to me. Like in my
In your elevator experience.
I don't know if it wasn't an open door, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a different button than that.
Okay.
This seemed like it was like a button that you don't really see
Okay.
that was just holding there for some, I don't know, maybe like people moving or some shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you know, the other thing that I can't wrap my brain around is like the autopsy didn't show anything either. The autopsy didn't show like any bruises or any cuts or any, like she wasn't sexually assaulted, right? That was correct, right? No sexual assault
No,
or
they did not find that. No.
Yeah. And then she's just, the only reason they found her, and it was 8 days later, is because, you know, the guests at the hotel were complaining about murky water and low water pressure. So they went up to check on the tanks, and the tanks are on top of the roof of this hotel, and she's just in one of the tanks. So in the tank, the door of the tank, like the lid of the tank, was closed. So then it's like, okay, someone would have to get it. Like it's not. I can't envision a scenario where someone dragged a body up there. Like,
no,
that seems like it should be impossible.
That was my first thing. Okay, there's no way someone. I shouldn't say no way, but in my estimation, there was 2 entrances up there. One was a regular staircase that had to have an alarm sound, and someone had to, you know, turn a key to make it go off. One was a fucking outside fire escape that you had to climb a ladder. So you instantly got to rule that out. She climbed up, like, if someone had her, I should say,
Right.
like someone's going to drape her over their shoulders and climb up that.
No chance.
No chance. Okay. So you think about the fire escape. They claimed that it would have gone off, although the sleuths went through it on another time and they got right on the roof using that door with no alarm going off or nothing. So, all right, certainly a possibility, right? But then you get to the water tanks, like you said. How you getting up there with the body draped? It's just so hard to believe.
Unless she was held at gunpoint.
Yep.
Someone, like, you know, made her walk there under her own free will. But that, like, they said no foul play and they deemed it accidental. Like, I can't get there in my head either. Like, how is it accidental if she goes up to the roof and closes the thing behind her? Like
the door?
Like the door to the tank.
Yeah, that was a crazy part too, man.
Unless someone was just like a passerby, like a maintenance guy, and was like, oh, and just went up there and closed it. Didn't really look in the tank. Like, oh,
I know. And I wish they provided more explanation to how much room there was in the tank.
Yeah.
You know, because they said obviously the water would fluctuate, but we never knew. It was like, all right, she's in the water, and now there's like 4 feet up between, you know, the opening and the water. Nobody ever described that. So I thought they did a bad job on that, obviously.
I agree.
And I never took too much stock in her being naked or her being in her clothes, because in my mind, and I mean, I'm giving away what I think happened. I think she got in there and, you know, she did just take her clothes off to tread water easily, and she was being bogged down. So, yeah, I mean, and can I say one of the, because were you like creeped out at parts, or no? Were you kind of like, oh, this is like, you know, whatever, just a regular watch?
I thought it was your well, it's like I get easily creeped out, right? Like I'm the guy who gets creeped out. Like, man, like even when we're talking about Onion Town, like bums me out. Hearing about places like Skid Row bummed me out. And like this girl, and then like hearing about like the kind of the internet harassment of, you know, alleged suspects, that bums me out too. Like this guy, the guy who looked like Marilyn Manson, I guess a little bit, the Pablo Vergara.
Yeah, he freaked me out.
Yeah, he's a scary fucking guy, but it doesn't make him a murderer.
No, not at all.
He's like a film student. So like that's the thing where it's just like all those things kind of creep me out, that things can get away from people so quickly. And the thing that bothered me the most was the apparent doctoring of that elevator tape, because then that means like there is a conspiracy, and people think like, oh, conspiracy, like we've talked about this, conspiracy doesn't have to mean necessarily something's bad. or like it's tinfoil. It just means that like one or more people or more than one people are trying to do something together. Like they're plotting something together. And so somebody had to be like, oh shit, like this is a problem. Could have just been the hotel manager being like, well, this is like, we can't have this. This guy works for us and we know he didn't do it because X, Y, and Z, but they're going to make him seem like he's doing it. It's going to be bad press. Well, like our hotel will go out of business. Like that to me, like maybe she had motivation or the LAPD like missed something and they had motivation, like who knows? But the fact that people were like knowingly and willingly like corrupting some of the evidence, that to me is like a failure of the system. And it makes it impossible to know the truth. That bothers me more than what actually went down.
Now, they did have explanation for why it was slowed down because you could see her face better at certain points. So it's like, well, we need a description.
Yeah.
Okay, I could understand that. They didn't have a great explanation for why seconds were trimmed off. So I agree. That's probably the only thing that went unnoticed.
And even
the
ticker,
blockage.
Yeah, like the ticker, the time clock being that, like, so then, so even if you have an explanation, but do you have to like make sure that you can't really read the clock? That makes it, like, and it was, I don't know.
I think to me, by far, the most creepy part about it was the fact that she was on the 14th floor.
And that's actually the 13th floor?
No, not even that. Not even that. Just the fact that her room was on the 5th. Why is she on the 14th floor, dude? Especially a hotel like that. Listen, everyone's been in an elevator like that that's old and rickety. It's got the metal buttons. It's probably very slow. And you've seen like an elevator door open and you've been like, oh, that's a floor I don't want to walk out on. Just get me to my floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they saw that she was in the 14th and the next floor was the roof, right? 15 was the roof.
Yeah.
There was one floor on the roof, whatever. And they said that obviously that's where like the shady people hung out.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like you put yourself in her shoes. Like if I was staying at a place and I knew it was pretty shady, like I'm making sure I'm on an elevator. It's 5 up, in, out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. It's a quick thing. Her just being on there was so creepy to me for some reason.
Well, and then, it all true. And then she also, made it known on her blog post that she was interested in meeting up with people. Like she wanted to like have like not just see the sights, but also meet people on this trip. And maybe she met the wrong kind of people when she was staying at that Cecil Hotel.
Maybe.
And then that was
and like I feel like they would have had footage up there with some people, with more people,
And that's where it gets back to, well, they doctored the one video. What else did they do? Because if they're willing to, make some changes to that video, whatever they say their motivations were, like let the police do that stuff. So like whatever the motivations were for doctoring that 2 days before you gave it to the police or whatever the number was, who knows what else they got rid of. So I don't know the motivations, but it seemed like there's way too many things going on. And then I don't know. It's like, who did they question? Who else was on those elevator videos? Like, I feel like there should be like a list of people that like you should have seen, like, oh, this person was acquitted. This person met with her here. Like this person was here at the same date. So, and that's the same thing with the Mexican filmmaker guy who wasn't even fucking there. And that should have been something like, well, based on our records and this evidence, that was like a year earlier. He's fine. Like they should have been able to figure that out. Yeah.
No, for sure. But then you get more people in the video, then that's for another person for these sleuths to be like, oh, I looked it up. He went to a Chinese buffet the day before and it's got to be him. You know what I mean? That's that's how these fucking people work,
I know.
The credit to the one guy who actually like came to at the end. He's like, listen, I was seeing a lot of stuff that wasn't there at one point. Now that I see what's kind of happened, horrible moment for that cop who misspoke about the lid being on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. Tough. So, I mean, that's, And it's just like, I just don't know how. So then it's just like, maybe she just wander up there, you know, maybe she was looking for an Instagram post. Like, who knows? Like, she could have just been going up to the heights, and it's just a girl who like was offered medication that maybe shouldn't have been. So maybe it was an accident. It's one of those things that it's maybe if that happened at the Marriott instead of a hotel with the reputation that it did, it wouldn't be a story. But it's like, you know, you had the woman in the beginning talking about the Cecil Hotel where she was taking over control. And she's saying, is there a room where somebody wasn't murdered or somebody didn't overdose or somebody didn't have a mysterious death? Like there's a long history of that happening at the Cecil Hotel because of their typical clientele. And they said it was like a place where they had like legitimate, like serial killers, like check in because you're just kind of off the grid. And they don't care about your credit cards or background checks or anything like it. It is like a destination or was a destination for kind of the people who live in the underbelly of society.
What did you think of the hotel manager?
I didn't trust her. It's just one of those instinct things where it's like, if it were me, I think I would probably have talked to a lawyer first and then just been like, hey, I don't even want to be in this documentary, you know? And, but she seemed like she liked the camera, and I'm always suspicious of people who want to be in front of the camera talking about stuff like this.
Interesting, because I actually didn't get too bad of a vibe from her. I thought she was there to be like, hey, listen, I'm trying to describe to you people what it was like to work there for 10 years.
Yeah.
I understand from an outside point of view, a woman, a 21-year-old girl going through the lobby saying, I'm crazy, but so is LA.
Yeah.
Should raise red flags, and I should be calling this person and that person, calling, you know, the person on the waiver. But she's right. The shit that happened there, like, it's just like, she just look at her. It's like she's seen some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
I just, and that shined through to me. I actually didn't, I don't know for sure, obviously, but I actually didn't get too bad of vibes from her at all.
I think if this went to trial, like if they had like a real suspect and it went to trial and I were on the jury and she was testifying, I would like be like, I don't know about her.
Okay.
You know, like I don't think that she's involved, but as like, just like gut instinct as like a character witness type of thing, I'm like, I take everything she says with a grain of salt. That was like my gut instinct on her.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I don't know. To me, I think she was just like trying to explain to people, hey, the place was fucking crazy. Crazy shit happened.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what more you want from me, you know?
And in that quote that you was, you know, I'm crazy, but so is LA. If somebody said that to me, I would just be like, okay, you know, like I would just like not pay any attention to it. And it's something that woman probably would have instantly have forgotten that like that interaction ever happened if Elisa Lam had lived. It was just like, yeah, you know, like it's just such a nothing comment. But the fact that she died was like, yep, like that's going to stick out. Like, what was a warning sign? It was that. And it was also the notes to her, you know, I guess you'd call it a roommate being like, get out, this and that. So I don't know. I think the documentary kind of did everybody involved a disservice in a way.
You think
like,
so?
Yeah. No justice for Elisa Lam. Paints everybody kind of in a bad light.
I do think it took the conspiracy theorists. I think it knocked the leg out from under them, because I just don't know how you watch that. And that's just, here's my final take. Like, yes, I think she wasn't taking her medicine. She was mentally ill. I think she was seeing stuff. And that's what she was doing in the elevator. And that might have led her on the roof, and maybe she kept seeing stuff. Maybe she saw someone in that tank and she jumped in and she covered it over her. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was any foul play, to my estimation, based on reading a bunch of shit. So,
see, I kind of think that there was. I think there could be some foul play involved.
Okay.
And where it's like, hey, like she went up to that floor where she didn't belong, and she saw some shit. And she got out of there, and people were like, you're not getting out of here. So now you're going to come up with us to the roof, because they thought she was going to rat on them for whatever seedy behavior is going up on the 14th floor. And And that was, so she's trying to dodge them. Like when she's pressing all those buttons, that made it seem to me like I'm going to get off on one of these floors and I'm going to make sure the elevator is occupied because somebody is looking for me. And it's that way they can't get in the elevator behind me. But then when she couldn't get in the elevator and she had to leave and she's stuck on that floor, maybe she tried to go take the stairs and somebody was like, hey, like you're coming with me and we're going up to the roof. And maybe, they talk about these people that stayed there 3-4 months at a time. Maybe they knew they had tanks up on that roof and that would be a place to like throw her in there. Like that's something that occurred to me.
Maybe, listen, you could, it's entirely possible that she walked up on that roof and she witnessed the wrong thing.
Yeah. Or even just on that floor. I'm saying she walked into a hotel room. She met somebody like, hey, I got something for you. And it's fucking heroin or prostitutes or who knows what. And she got freaked out and she tried to leave. And then they're like, hey, we can't let this girl leave.
But the hand motions, Chief, like the way she was.
Yeah, I know.
Back and forth.
But maybe she took something too that she wasn't supposed to take. But again, the toxicology reports are kind of clean. So I guess if they had like some kind of weird drug in her system that she saw or took up there, then that would have showed up and that was clean. So I don't know. Maybe it was, that's what crossed my mind. Like she's trying to get away in that elevator and that's why she pressed all the buttons. And I feel like I've seen that in a movie somewhere before, which is probably where it's just like, hey, I'm hitting all these buttons and I'm jetting. And I think that could have been it. I don't know, but it seemed like even if she was like, but again, that like those hand motions were when the video was kind of also slowed down. So maybe they didn't look that weird. Like that could, like she could have just been like talking normally, but they looked like she was grasping at something because of the way it was manipulated. So
the fact that it was like the plot for a John C. Reilly movie as well is crazy.
Yeah,
the crazy coincidences.
Yeah.
Were something. I will say that the tuberculosis outbreak and then being her name backwards.
Yep.
Then the whole cemetery Google Maps thing, a lot of crazy shit. Don't get me wrong. And you just did kind of almost sell me on the fact that maybe there was graffiti on the roof when that other group went up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they go up there and she's in the tank and someone sits on the lid for whatever and she can't ever get, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Or even just like, have you tried to do anything in water? Like it's tough.
Hard, yeah.
So like I remember even as a kid or now, not even as a kid, as an adult, like if you're in the pool and there's like a diving board, try to like pull yourself up out of the water with the diving board. Like you can do it chin up, but trying to get yourself up and out is tough. So if like that, like being able to like claw on the inside of the tank and push something open would be impossible. I don't even know if you had to sit on the roof or sit on the latch. So
yeah, that's fair. I don't know, man. I still don't. I don't know. That's just my final.
Yeah.
And I could be entirely wrong. Absolutely, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think there's foul play. That's my final thing. I think it was like a combination. She wasn't taking her pills, so she wandered in, met the wrong people. They got suspicious of her, and they're like, we can't let this girl blow our cover. Well, let's dump her in that tank up there.
Wow. All right. We disagree.
Okay.
that
happens from time to time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's I prefer that on these actually,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that just makes sense. I think she was on the run and then just couldn't get out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So let us know what you guys think. Unless if you have anything else here, Chief, any other note about the doc that we didn't get to or anything like that. I was, like I said, I was uncomfortable with that guy being like, this is the last moment, like she got it. And that guy was so weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. Agreed.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really it. That's Elisa Lam. That's the Cecil Hotel. Thanks everybody for listening. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.